This week, Anthony Hopkins hungers for Julianne Moore in Hannibal.
Lonely neighbors discover bittersweet romance in the Mood for Love.
And Jason Biggs has to decide between his girlfriend and his best friends in Saving Silverman.
I'm giving very serious thought to eating your wife.
The most famous serial killer in movie history is lusting for fresh blood in Hannibal, one of the new movies we'll be reviewing this week, and we'll take a look at the original Hannibal Lecter, plus have a special report on Oscar-related websites from our internet correspondent, Michaela Pereira. I'm Roger Ebert, film critic for the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Richard Roeper, columnist for the Chicago Sun-Times. Anthony Hopkins is back as Dr. Hannibal Lecter in the long-awaited sequel to The Silence of the Lambs, the Academy Award-winning picture that also resulted in Oscars for Hopkins and Jodie Foster. Fresh from Gladiator, director Ridley Scott fills the screen with beautifully haunting and stunning images that give the movie an operatic feel. This time, Julianne Moore slips on Clarice Starling's shoulder holster and finds herself on the doctor's trail. Here she meets with an ex-orderly from the mental asylum where she met Lecter all those years ago.
Did you ever think, after he escaped, he might come after you?
No. He once told me that whenever feasible, he preferred to eat the rude. Free-range rude, he called them.
That's Frankie Faison as Barney. Even though Lecter is so infamous that Hannibal-related items are selling for big bucks on eBay, he's been able to carve out a new identity in Florence as a scholar named Dr. Fell. The great Giancarlo Giannini plays Pazzi, a local detective who thinks he's hunting Lecter when, in fact, it's the other way around.
It's your ancestor, Commendatore, hanging beneath these very windows.
Starling knows Patsy is skirting the law to nab Lecter for the reward money, and she calls him to let him know she's onto him.
Someday you'll thank me, or you won't. I don't care. He'll be alive. Inspector Pazzi?
Is this Clarice? Oh, hello, Clarice. I'm afraid I have bad news for you.
Is he dead?
We're deep into the story before that first conversation between Hannibal and Clarice, but even when they finally tango in person, there's a surprising lack of tension or erotic undercurrent. And although Julianne Moore is a fine actress, she's not Jodie Foster, who was so indelible as Clarice. This isn't like a James Bond picture where we can make that leap of faith to another performer. But even if The Silence of the Lambs were erased from my memory, I still wouldn't recommend Hannibal. It's more of a gore fest than a psychological thriller, and the decision to show the cannibalism in graphic detail, I think, is a huge mistake. Instead of being terrifying, Hannibal is just disgusting.
You know, you make a good point. I suppose that if the sight of a man cutting off his own face and feeding it to his dogs who are seen eating it doesn't get the NC-17 for violence, then the MPAA is just never going to give that rating again.
Not to mention the fact that we see a human throbbing brain at some point with a guy's head screwed up.
And it's a little bit of it is sauteed and fed to him for his lunch. You know, I had another problem with Hannibal in addition to the ones you've mentioned. For me, the essential appeal of Hannibal Lecter was that his mind roamed widely while his body was imprisoned. I'll never forget that first shot of him in The Silence of the Lambs. Clarice descends 7 flights of stairs and goes through 7 locked doors before we finally see him for the first time behind that unbreakable plexiglass wall.
That is the Duomo scene from the Belvedere. Do you know, Florence?
All that detail just from memory, sir?
Memory, Agent Starling, is what I have instead of a view.
But now, in Hannibal, here he is in a Washington train station, riding on a merry-go-round, and instead of being the embodiment of caged malevolence, he's been reduced to a more conventional movie predator.
Clarice, you were very, very warm. You were so close.
In the first movie, he had to use his intelligence to try to control his world and to try to escape. Here, he seems to have this mystical ability to escape from anywhere at any time, and we don't even see how he does it. I think that kind of misses the point. Although the movie is made with craft and skill and it has fine performances, it doesn't have the focus and the power of the first one, and I agree with you, thumbs down.
It also doesn't have any of the terror of the first one. The first one was a really scary movie, and part of the reason was because they didn't show us that much violence. They showed us a lot of the aftermath, and it was more of a psychological thriller. This thing, you see it in graphic detail. There's not one moment in this movie, which runs longer than 2 hours, where I was ever scared or surprised. Yeah, you're disgusted. Well, so what? They can do disgusting in any kind of a movie. To have this caliber of a cast and Ridley Scott and all this money and all this anticipation, and then to blow it on, well, we're just going to gross people out, to me is a huge missed opportunity.
Yeah, you know, I read the book, and at the time, when it first came out, everybody said, oh, they can't film this. And what amazed me was they could film that, because the stuff in the book that you thought couldn't be filmed is filmed. And I'm sure that audiences, there are going to be big audiences for this movie.
Of course.
I'm sure they're going to laugh at some of the scenes that we've talked about, because that's a way of dispelling your feeling of discomfort. Other people are going to hide their eyes. But whatever they do, it's basically just a geek show. It isn't this kind of elegant, stylish imagination about the mind of this Hannibal Lecter that made Silence of the Lambs so special. One footnote, an actor whose name I will not mention plays a person basically without a face in the movie and does a good job.
Yeah, he's terrific.
Yeah. Coming up later in the show, Michaela Pereira is back with a web report on the Oscar race that's really heating up. And coming up next, Steve Zahn and Jack Black are hell-bent on saving Silverman.
We're not giving up on Garen. Coming on, yeah!
Yeah, buddy. What's up, dude? CD. Judy, awesome to meet you.
Judith.
Judith. And a beer bong for the lady?
No.
Totally cool.
They've been buddies since grade school, and they're in a band that performs the songs of their idol, Neil Diamond. But their friendship is threatened when Jason Biggs brings home Amanda Peet, who wants him to drop his buddies and clean up his act. And that's the setup for Saving Silverman, one of the most remarkably bad movies in a very long time. Jason Biggs from American Pie stars with Jack Black and Steve Zahn as his lifelong friends.
Look, we don't think she's right for you.
Break up with her.
Yeah.
She's ruining our lives and yours.
And this graph should illustrate our point. Look, before Judith, our fun level was at an all-time high, 93. It is now an 8.
Maybe this is the answer. The two guys kidnap Amanda Peet and try to interest Jason Biggs in his first love from high school. She's played by Amanda Detmer and is in training to become a nun, although fortunately she has not yet taken the vow of chastity.
Sandy, remember me? J.D. McNugent? I was the guy who went to the prom with the tuxedo painted on my naked body.
Oh, I guess I missed it.
Neil Diamond himself shows up in the movie, sings a few songs, and shows what a good sport he is. Saving Silverman is his first movie in 20 years since The Jazz Singer, and incredibly enough, is even worse than that one was. Some of the elements in the movie show a certain promise. I did like R. Lee Ermey's performance as the high school coach who simply suggests they murder the rival girlfriend. But the movie is flat and stupid and inept and badly timed and so hapless that even Jack Black and Steve Zahn, who are usually good in comedies, are bad here. I have a theoretical question for you, Richard. How far down can one thumb go?
I don't know if I have the answer for that, but I do agree with you that this is a truly awful movie. Let's talk for a second about the two women in this movie, Amanda Detmer and Amanda Peet, the two Amandas. Now, Amanda Detmer is the sweet love interest. They literally have her dressed up as a nun and a hooker. And Amanda Peet, they put in these revealing outfits and turn her into this horrible character, and they keep dousing her with stuff, whether it's food or beer, or she's got to fall down. I mean, it's just such a misogynistic film about women. And you mentioned, you know, Jack Black, who's so good in High Fidelity, and he's reduced here to playing just, you know, the fat slob guy who's doing beer bongs and stuff. He had a dread going to the set every day to do this. He must.
What was it about Amanda Peet? Her, you know, like the costumes all looked like something that Jennifer Lopez would wear to the Golden Globes. I mean,
exactly.
Very, very real. Just for going to the supermarket or walking down the street, she's always dressed like that. And then, of course, the nun has the form-fitting habit, you know, that's kind of very attractive.
And we're supposed to be amused by, like, the sight of nuns bench pressing, like, that's funny.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's
it's like
a really
bad Disney movie from the 60s or something.
Distasteful scene where she's taken away from the altar just as she's about to take her final vows, and then, of course, the Mother Superior uses 4-letter words and so forth. And you look at this movie and you just think it's just one bad idea after another.
And they try to cover it up by this driving rock and roll soundtrack every scene. And Neil Diamond, who was really bad in The Jazz Singer, still isn't a better actor 20 years later.
Poor Neil Diamond, but he's a good sport.
Well, I guess so.
At least he's participating.
A bad judge of script.
Participating, in a sense, in his own roast. When we come back, the Oscar nominations will be announced on Tuesday, and our internet expert, Michaela Pereira, is here with a special report on the best Oscar-oriented websites.
Well, there are more Oscar sites on the web than ever before. Coming up, we'll take a look at the best of them.
Joining us again is our internet correspondent, Michaela Pereira, who's here to talk about Oscar-related websites.
I sure am, Richard. Well, the big question is this a good year for Oscar? Well, until I saw Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and Traffic, I did not think so. There are a lot of decent films out there this year, but not many clear winners. Maybe that's why, more than in years past, this year's Oscar race is being closely followed on the internet. Now, the obvious place to start is the official sites of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, Oscar.org and Oscar.com. Now, Oscar.org is more the business side of things geared toward Academy members. But of value here, the rules and regulations that govern the Oscars, and of course a list of the eligible films, anything from The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Are you talking to me?
To You Can Count on Me.
You know, you're the worst manager we've ever had.
Oscar.com, on the other hand, is more like the event itself. Big, glamorous, show-busy. The website itself is interactive, designed to get audiences jazzed about the Oscar telecast. There's a whole section devoted to the fashion of Oscar, in fact, weekly Oscar trivia, and beginning next week, games such as Predict the Winner. Will it be Gladiator or Castaway as Best Picture? And does Gillian Anderson in The House of Mirth have a chance against Julia Roberts and Aaron Brockovich?
Don't make me beg.
Now, in terms of tracking the actual race, the trade papers claim to have the inside track. My favorite of these ones, though, is Variety.com and their Academy Central Oscars 2001 feature. You'll find a very thorough collection of articles from Variety's stable of writers. But perhaps of most interest is a complete history of Oscar over the years. For example, what film did Michael Douglas win his first Oscar? Well, it's a trick question. It's actually One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which he produced. Now, for straight-up Oscar buzz, check out the aptly named Buzz pages at OscarWatch.com. Their current Best Actor frontrunners include Jeffrey Rush for Quills, Billy Elliott's Jamie Bell, Javier Bardem of Before Night Falls, but they see Tom Hanks leading the pack for Castaway. Now, I disagree. Personally, I favor Bardem and Bell. Now, this site does a good job of combing the major publications for Oscar news and updates, rounding things out with their own articles on anything and everything Oscar-esque. Well, no matter what, fellas, it's just way too early to tell who's going to win. The nominations, though, come out this Tuesday. If it were up to me, the winners would be Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon for Best Picture and Finding Forrester's Rob Brown for Best Actor. I thought it was a great performance. And 2 nods for Traffic, Benicio del Toro for Best Supporting Actor, Steven Soderbergh for Direction. As for the others, you got me.
Well, Michaela, if it were for me, it'd be Almost Famous for Best Picture and Michael Douglas for Best Actor for Wonder Boys. But, of course, it isn't up to either one of us. One interesting site is Hollywood Stock Exchange, where people buy and sell stocks in movies and actors and screenwriters and directors, and their prices go up and down every day, just like the Dow Jones average. It has a pretty good record in predicting box office success, although in terms of the Oscars, I think it's still improving.
Well, my favorite site of all these is Inside.com's Inside Oscars, which kind of takes all the things that you guys have mentioned and crunches them all into this, what they call the metric system, where they actually assign a numerical value to pictures and actors and actresses, and they even they incorporate things like, is it getting a lot of buzz? Are people related to other famous actors? Because that helps a lot. And even in the actors category, the color and cut of your hair can make a difference. There are trends that we didn't even know.
We didn't even know
So
about.
that's my favorite of the whole bunch.
Well, they've got some great articles there. I just read an article, actually, about how the fact that screenwriters aren't getting shown any Oscar love these days, and they're a little upset about that. But there's lots of places to look on the web when it comes to Oscars, so people should start logging on.
Okay, thanks a lot, Michaela.
Thank you.
When we come back, the bittersweet romance, In the Mood for Love.
I'm in the mood for love.
Coming only to theaters February 16th. It's the first Recess movie.
Attention, students. This is Principal Brickley talking. I want to inform you all that I have a fat, saggy butt, which I like to scratch every hour on the hour.
Principal Brickley, sir. What a surprise.
It's party time.
It's a Recess movie so big.
Hold the rope, boy.
Only a theater can hold it.
Could you please get off of me?
Recess, School's Out, rated G.
Tender.
Coming only to theaters February 16th.
Sometimes unrequited love is the most romantic love of all, and that seems to be the gentle hint in the Mood for Love, the bittersweet story of neighbors who want to fall in love but try to resist that temptation because their spouses are already having an affair and they don't want to descend to that level. When they first notice that his wife and her husband always seem to be gone at the same time, they think it's a coincidence.
係啊，佢公司有事派咗佢出門。唔怪之成日面當撞到你啦。一個人費事住啦。係啊，你太太咧呢排都唔見佢。佢媽媽身體有啲唔舒服。
Those are Maggie Chung and Tony Leung, two of the top stars in Hong Kong, as sad and lonely neighbors whose spouses are cheating. They go out to dinner and begin to piece together the clues.
其實我先生都有條呔同你一模一樣嘅。佢話係佢事頭送俾佢嘅，所以日日都戴住喎。
我太太嘅有個手都同你個一模一樣。Here's a heartbreaking scene in which they play act, trying to imagine how their cheating partners first started down the road to adultery.
你老公唔出聲啊？我諗佢都瞓咗㗎啦。不如今晚唔好返屋企啦。我老公唔會咁樣講嘅。
In the Mood for Love was directed by Wong Kar-wai, one of the most gifted Hong Kong directors, and he sets it in the early 60s, saturating it with a film noir atmosphere of late nights, empty corridors, sad conversations, lonely restaurants, cigarette smoke, and always the presence of sexuality right there beneath the surface. This is a complex, subtle, grown-up, and erotic story which is about how sex and love do not always go together.
Well, it does have a beautiful film noir look and feel, but what it doesn't have is a film noir story. It doesn't have any story at all as far as I'm concerned. And I understand that it's all about choices not made and them deciding to be, as you say, you know, better than their spouses. And you said at the beginning there that they're not going to descend to that level, although I think they would have been elevating to another level if they would have acknowledged their love. So for me, as much as I enjoyed the images, and he really does a great job of evoking Hong Kong in the early 60s, it's got a great look. I'm not recommending it because there were just too many scenes that repeated themselves. We get that they're not going to ever really talk to themselves, talk to each other about what they're really feeling. And, you know, the 6th or 7th time they're having noodles and not saying anything to each other is when the movie
But some of those
lost
scenes,
me.
Those are not just redundant scenes. Sometimes he deliberately does the same scene twice to show how things could have worked out differently. I think that's a stylistic choice, and I think that these two people are character studies. It would have been more routine and more ordinary if they had decided to have an affair too. And at the end, there's that ironic kind of development, which I don't want to give away, indicating that maybe things could have turned out differently. So I like the way that it really penetrates into their personality.
That finally a plot kicking in was too little, too late.
Oh, but the fact that there isn't a plot is the plot.
Well, and
it doesn't have to be, you know, act two,
I got that, I
to be in
understood that,
bed,
but
you know.
I got that, I understood that. It just didn't work for me. Okay, coming up next, the thriller featuring the original Hannibal Lecter is my video pick of the week.
We're looking for a man. We know he works at Gateway. We don't have his name, but we know he drives a van.
Pick of the Week is brought to you by Nestle Raisinets. Try Raisinets in new, convenient, resealable bags.
Before Hannibal Lecter ever got a whiff of Clarice Starling, he aimed his psychological daggers at an FBI agent named Will Graham in Manhunter, a superb thriller directed by Michael Mann. In this 1986 release, William Peterson plays the FBI profiler who put Lecter behind bars, but not before the doctor had killed 9 people and taken a slice out of Graham's midsection.
You want to know how he's choosing them, don't you?
I thought you might have some ideas.
Why should I tell you?
You get to see the file on this case. And there's another reason.
Pray tell.
Thought you might be curious to see if you're smarter than the person I'm looking for.
Then by implication, you think you're smarter than me since you caught me.
No. I know that I'm not smarter than you.
Then how did you catch me?
You had disadvantages.
What disadvantages?
You're insane.
That's Brian Cox's Lecter in a chilling performance that rivals what Anthony Hopkins eventually did with the role. Graham has come to Lecter for help in tracking down a vicious serial killer with a penchant for biting who has been dubbed the Tooth Fairy. He's played by Tom Noonan. The Tooth Fairy also has a bizarre romance going with a blind co-worker played by Joan Allen.
Hear it?
Manhunter is now available in a special 2-disc DVD, which includes interviews with the cast and a director's cut with a slightly different ending. This movie is much more terrifying than Hannibal and nearly as memorable as Silence, and it's my video pick of the week.
Okay, now let's take another look at the movies we reviewed on this week's show. 2 thumbs down for Hannibal, which is well made but more of a geek show than a horror film. 2 more thumbs down for Saving Silverman, an incredibly bad film. And finally, we split on In the Mood for Love. Richard thought it was beautiful but redundant. I liked its bittersweet character portraits, and I'm sure millions of people are going to go see Hannibal, and they're not going to see a bad movie, just one I think that is unsuccessful at doing what it wants to do.
Yeah, it's a missed opportunity, and it's really incredibly disgusting. Okay, remember, you can hear our reviews at Ebert-Roeper-movies.com and read us in print at suntimes.com. Next week, more new movies, including the love story Sweet November, starring Keanu Reeves and Charlize Theron.
This is it. Life will never be better or sweeter than this.
And also Down to Earth, a comedy starring Chris Rock and Regina King.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but you're not dreaming. But I'm not dead. Check the guest list and see when Mr. Barton was supposed to arrive.
That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.
Look what's for